You are listening to Unstoppable Actors, the essential podcast for ambitious, unknown actors with me, Louise, the artistic director of Standby Method Acting Studio. And for the last 13 years, I've been taking unknown actors with blank CVs all the way to Netflix dramas, Amazon Prime films, TV soaps and stage plays around the world. And every week I'll be talking with you and sharing how you can become a paid working unstoppable actor, because you 1000% can. An acting career is doable. Are you ready to dive into the episode? Hello and welcome to another episode of Unstoppable Actors. I'm so excited you are listening to this episode, which focuses specifically on thriving in the acting industry with ADHD. If you are brand new to Unstoppable Actors, welcome. I hope this is going to be the first of many episodes that you tune into and that you are going to take so much value from not just this episode, but all the other ones as well. We have so many people coming out Unstoppable Actors Facebook group sharing how they've binged Unstoppable Actors. Now they've taken so much from it, and then they come into the Facebook group because they're really excited to learn more. So if at the end of this episode you feel like you've taken something away, you've added to your knowledge, you feel inspired, do come and join the Unstoppable Actors Facebook group, and I will help you become that unstoppable actor that you're capable of becoming. And if you are a regular listener, welcome, as always. I absolutely love having you here. If you've been listening for a while and you've not rated the show, please do. It really helps me know what content you are loving and what to do more of. It's very, very helpful for me. And of course, it lets other actors know that this is a useful free resource for them as well. Now, ADHD is something that I am halfway through having an assessment for. However, I know that I do have it. And I know that if I think back to when I was little, there were obvious signs that I had ADHD, but it wasn't spoken about back in the 90s the way it is now. But I know I've always felt different from other people. I know that my brain works different. And so I am going to share with you a little bit about how I felt different and what that looks like with my brain. And then I'm going to apply that to acting and some tips that I've learned along the way to help me. I wouldn't say overcome the ADHD, because I have to acknowledge that that's just the way my brain is wired, but work with it. I think ADHD can absolutely, at least in my experience, give us low self-esteem, because I have always felt different to other people. I've known that I've got a lot of energy, big energy. And that is something that's always been commented on in rehearsals. When I've gone to acting classes, on set, people just notice that my energy is huge. And I did get a little bit self-conscious about that, because I have had comments over the years before I knew really what ADHD was, such as, oh, have you got ADHD because your energy is off the wall? And I used to get very, very self-conscious about that, because it made me feel different and like I wasn't as worthy as being in the rehearsal space as others. And I've really had to work with that and, focus on finding my strengths with ADHD through things like therapy. When I was little, and I'm talking like 4 years old at school, couldn't retain information. It took me a long time to process things, much longer than other people, and to really embed lessons that were being taught at school. But particularly when it came to things like reading stories, which is obviously very important as an actor, I couldn't retain the story. So when I was questioned on my comprehension of the story, it wasn't very good, because half of the information had already fallen out of my brain. And that's one of the big things about ADHD, is retaining information can be really bloody hard. Storytelling is obviously our job as actors, so I am going to come to this a little bit later on. And then there's been other things as well, the rejection sensitivity dysphoria, which I've briefly touched upon, when people made comments about my energy being big and off the wall and do I have ADHD. I didn't realise at the time that I was experiencing rejection sensitivity dysphoria, which is the only way I can describe it in my body. It's like a pang And it's a very intense pang that starts in my chest and then it radiates out all the way through my body, and it feels horrible. I feel like I don't belong wherever I am. I feel like I'm different. I feel rejected. I feel worthless. And then, of course, that starts the looping in the brain of lots of different thoughts around why I am worthless. And it can become very chaotic inside my head. And of course, rejection is something that we face numerous times as an actor. So that has been quite hard to conquer as well, but I've managed to find some ways around this. So if you feel like you do have ADHD or you've got an official diagnosis, then I hope there's something useful in this for you. I do have to caveat this by saying I'm not a GP, I can't diagnose you. What I share in here you may relate to, but that doesn't mean you definitely have ADHD. If you are relating to what I'm saying, go and get yourself an assessment by someone who is an expert in this. I'm simply sharing my experience with it and what I've done to make my experience and the journey of being an actor much better with what I believe are challenges with ADHD. Of course, there are many incredible things about ADHD as well, such as the hyper-focus holes you can get into and the creativity and the out-of-the-box thinking, but there are also lots of challenges as well, and they're the things that I'm going to be highlighting and talking about today. And I hope it'll reassure you. I hope it'll inspire you. And even if you don't have ADHD, I would say listen to this episode anyway, because there's a good chance that when you're on set or when you're rehearsing for a stage play, there's going to be actors in the production who have got it. So this will build your empathy for them and help you have a little more compassion for these actors who are neurospicy like myself. So I noticed many different ways it would affect me specifically in my acting life, and it would be things like punctuality issues, always setting off late for auditions, and I'm talking about in-person auditions here, or always getting my self-tapes in by the skin of my teeth on the deadline. I found that ADHD really affected line learning. You know, my brain wants to leave it till last minute because it dislikes the process. It's not enjoyable for me. And it feels overwhelming as well, especially when you've got those roles where you've got a 3-page monologue. I mean, I am exaggerating there. I've never done a 3-page monologue before, but you know, where you've got really big chunks of lines and you look at it and you go, oh, how am I ever going to remember all of these? Or you've got lines that sound similar. They're so samey. You're like, oh my God, my brain just cannot get a grip of these. That causes me to stress. So line learning has been a very stressful process for me. When it comes to the prep work, whether it be prepping for auditions or prepping for productions, I am easily distracted. And I will get sucked into research and backstories and detective mode, and I'll get in hyper-focus holes with them. But before I know it, time blindness has took over, and then I've missed out other parts of the character preparation. And sometimes it becomes a real challenge to balance out my time and prioritise things. Also as well, ADHD is something that has affected me running Standby Method Acting Studio, and I've really had to work hard to find how do I balance running this acting studio and an acting career and life as well, when time blindness and procrastination and overwhelm are things that I easily get sucked into. Now, because ADHD brains are easily overwhelmed, I'm going to segment this and I'm going to make it as easy to digest as possible, because the last thing I want to do is overwhelm you with loads of information and you can't retain it and then you're like, what did she say? But also know that you can download this episode and you can listen to it as many times as you need to until the tips have stuck in your head. And that's one thing I have to do when it comes to learning something, because I know I don't retain information the way a typical brain does. I have to work that little bit harder, put in that extra effort, and I have to listen to things multiple times until it makes sense to me and until I can retain the information. So I just want to give you a little bit of data and context on ADHD. So it's estimated to affect around 2.5% of adults globally, which means, as I've already said, there's a good chance that when you're on set at an audition, in an acting class, in rehearsals, you are going to be with other actors who have got ADHD. And specifically in the UK, the data The recent data is showing that nearly 2.5 million people in the UK have ADHD, but there's only around 1/3 of them that have got a formal diagnosis. I don't have the stats for other countries, but I imagine it's going to be pretty similar. Backstage have done an article on this, and you may have heard of Backstage, and they have noted that performers with ADHD do face difficulties like remembering lines, like focusing, like managing time, all those things that I've shared that I have real difficulties with. And the reason I'm sharing this with you, this data, is because I want you to know that whether you've got a formal diagnosis or not, you're not alone. There are so many creatives and actors in the industry, both starting out and at a professional level, who have ADHD, undiagnosed and diagnosed. And that's really, as well as inspiring you and helping you, the main point of this episode is to let you know that you are not alone. And we can make an acting career happen regardless of how our brain is wired, essentially. So if we go back into the topics that I've mentioned and segment them, punctuality. This has been a big thing all of my life. I've often got told that I play for time, which is something that I heard growing up. And I don't play for time, it's that I struggle with time blindness. So I can start a task and know I have something to do and know I have somewhere to be, but then I get in such a hyper focus with the task that I forget all about time. And then before you know it, I'm on the back foot. I'm late for things. All throughout secondary school, I was always late for it. Always, 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 without a fail. Every single day I was late for secondary school. I would always be late for getting ready for family events. Much to the annoyance of people, I've always been late for my friends for things that we've had planned. Just lateness is something that I absolutely struggle with. And we know that the industry has a real thing about punctuality. So what I've had to do, because also the thing about punctuality is fair. You don't want people turning up late because it does put stress and pressure on productions and the audition process. You know, if I turn up to an audition 30 minutes late, that then is knocking the rest of the day for the casting director out of sync. And that's not what I want to do. So I've had to come up with a little hack where I tell myself that any in-person audition I go to is 30 minutes earlier than the actual time, because I know I'm going to end up being late for that 30 minutes earlier slot, which means I will be on time for the actual slot, which I know sounds a little bit crazy, but it's just how my brain works. But it means that I'm on time. So what I do is I set a lot of alarms and I label them. And these alarms are there to get me to set off, to remind me you need to set off, so I can't get sucked into time blindness, I can't get sucked into distractions, procrastination, because the alarms are going off on my phone every 10 minutes to say, right, you need to set off now, this is important. And I do this even if I'm having a good day and I'm ahead of schedule with everything. I don't ever break this routine or this habit with the alarms and telling myself the audition is 30 minutes earlier, because the minute I do that, I'll get sucked back into the time blindness, the distraction, the procrastination, the overwhelm and the stress. And time blindness is really, really common in actors. It's really common in ADHD, and it really does cause us to feel stressed out when we're turning up to things late, because then what also happens in my experience is I create rejection sensitivity dysphoria in myself by going, oh my God, you're so bad, you have turned up late. So I'm rejecting myself already. Then the loops start in my brain. I'll start overthinking everything and I cannot get out of the loops. And then before I know it, I am feeling really crappy. And I don't ever want to bring that energy on set. I don't ever want to bring that energy to rehearsals. I don't want to bring that energy to auditions. So by telling myself that my audition is 30 minutes earlier than it is, perfect. It works perfectly for me. And I avoid all of those spirals that I can easily get sucked into. And I have to do the same with self-tapes. With self-tapes, I have to tell myself the deadline is 2 days before the actual deadline. I know in my head that getting a self-tape in early gives it the best chance of being watched. But the ADHD part of me will never, ever work with that. It will always get the self-tape in just at the very last minute, which is stressful. So I tell myself the deadline is 2 days before the actual deadline, and that works a treat for me. And I have to stick to these religiously. I have to be so disciplined with it. When it comes to learning lines, as I've already said, if I see a 3-page monologue that I've got to learn, that just feels overwhelming. And so I'll put it off. I won't do it because in my head, all I see is a sea of words and I think, this is not doable. So then I get distracted, I find other things to do. And then before you know it, it's to the last minute and I've got to learn the 3-page monologue. I mean, I'm using that as an example. I've never done a 3-page monologue, but even lines, like I've said earlier, where they're all very samey, they sound the same, there's a lot of repetition of the same words, my brain easily gets overwhelmed, it shuts down and then it procrastinates. And I have to be honest that the line learning part of acting is my least favourite part. It's not enjoyable because it feels like effort. It wasn't until recently when I did a film in 2022 that I actually accidentally stumbled across a really good way for me to learn lines. And as ever, I'd left learning the lines to the last minute. Now, I have to be honest and say, in my process, I won't ever learn the lines as the first part of the character prep anyway. I won't do that simply because I get locked into delivering the lines in a patterned way. So if I learn them too early, I then will not deliver the performance organically, spontaneously in the moment because the lines have got sucked into my head in a particular rhythm and then I can't get out of it. So I do always leave it later on in the process to learn my lines, but the ADHD will make me learn them at the very last minute, which then becomes very stressful. So as I was prepping for this film, I found a really good method for myself. And all it is chunking out my lines. So I'm very visual. This is another part of my ADHD. If things are not visual, if I don't have them in front of me, stuck up on the wall on Post-it notes, or I can't see it on a piece of paper, I will literally forget all about it. That thing doesn't exist. So when it comes to learning lines, I will segment the script into chunks. And what I will do is I then have to work in a very structured way. Now, I naturally rebel structure, but the ADHD thrives in it. So even though I don't particularly like structure, I like to be free-flowing, I like things to happen spontaneously, I know that doesn't work with the ADHD. So I'll set an alarm for 60 minutes and I'll give myself a goal because I'm quite goal-orientated. You might be similar to me, you might be different. And I'll say to myself, right, we've got 60 minutes to learn these 3 chunks of lines. So I put the timer on, so there's going to be an auditory alarm that goes off. ADHD, or at least in my experience of it, tends to thrive on that adrenaline of last minute things. So the alarm acts as that last minute adrenaline, like, oh, you've got 60 minutes to do this. It thrives in it, so it works really well for me. So I've got 60 minutes, I'm learning these 3 chunks of lines. When the alarm goes off at the end of the 60 minutes, I'm then going to test myself on the lines. However, I did notice that my brain could still start wandering quite easily because it doesn't find line learning that exciting. So I found binaural beats. You can look them up on YouTube, you can find them on Spotify. Binaural beats are everywhere. But I specifically chose focus ones. And when I put them on for that 60-minute period in which I'm going to learn those 3 chunks of lines, it does something to my brain where I don't think about anything else. And voila, the lines are learned. Now, to make the line learning process a little bit easier as well, what I'm doing in the character preparation stage, when I'm reading the script multiple times, when I'm playing detective and figuring out who the character is, when I'm in rehearsals, what I'm doing is I'm also emotionalizing the lines. I'm figuring out what is the emotion behind these lines, because when I can figure that out, they're going to be easier to remember because we remember things emotionally. So that's already setting me up for success for when it comes to later down the line when I start doing this chunking technique and the timer technique and then putting on the binaural beats. I've already set myself up for success because I've started to emotionalize them, so then the lines will become easier to learn. So that's what I do. It really helps me. If you want to try that, maybe just try segmenting the lines into chunks and see if that works for you, see how you get on with it. Or maybe try everything that I do with learning lines. We then talked about prep work and prepping the character. So I use method acting. As you know, I'm a method actor and I'm a method acting coach. It's what I train my students in. Method acting for me is an incredible way to connect to the character. Firstly, to find out who they are on a really deep level, and then to make an authentic connection with them. However, because I love the prep work so much, I can easily get sucked into time blindness again, where I'm spending far too much time on the things that I love and then neglecting other areas of the prep work. So what I have to do is give myself structure again. And I have to take myself into a distraction-free zone. And for me, that's a coffee shop. And I have to use the structure of time again. So I will say to myself, okay, Lou, you have got 2 hours. 2 hours in this coffee shop to do your script analysis. That would be the first part of my character prep. And I'm going to play detective. And whatever I get done in that 2 hours gets done. And I have to end when that alarm goes off after the 2 hours is finished. That's made me work in a very focused way. I can get into a hyper-focus hole and I'm being structured and I'm not getting distracted, because when I'm in a coffee shop, there's not other things around the home to start taking my attention. But also I'm then not doing too much. I'm not doing 6 hours or 10 hours on script analysis because I've given myself the boundaries of the time of 2 hours. Now, what I also have to do is create visual timetables. I've already said I'm very, very visual. So I'll have a visual timetable. It's up on the wall. It's colour coordinated. It's just how my brain works. And I will timetable in script analysis, because that's very important, then the character research, and then the character connection. And again, all of this happens in coffee shops on different days with the structure of the time limit on it. So I can't go over and I can't get distracted. And I start this early. I start all of this work early. So again, my brain doesn't procrastinate me into chaos. Now, my brain also is very, very creative, like I imagine yours is. So I love the imaginative side of doing the character backstories and all of the detective work that comes with prepping a character. It's a real strength. But as I've said, if I don't structure it with those boundaries of the time and being in the coffee shop, I'll either end up doing way more than I need to and doing like 10 hours and burning myself out, or I'll end up rushing the important parts. So if you've got ADHD or an inkling that you've got it, or even if you don't, you can still use these tips. They're not solely for people with ADHD. Schedule that creative time separately from memorising the lines. Set deadlines. Reward yourself for finishing the fun parts and the hard parts, because ADHD loves those dopamine boosts. So after I've done my 2 hours in the coffee shop of the different parts of the character prep, I'll then allow myself to go and have a little look around the shopping centre or the retail park, wherever I am. Or maybe I'll go to a farm cafe and then I'll have a little wander around there. And that's my way of my brain decompressing. But it's also a reward as well. So I have mentioned to you that ADHD does come with rejection sensitivity dysphoria, and we get very heightened emotional responses. And that is something that used to get the better of me when it came to auditions. And one of the things that I had to do is remind myself and really embed a story in my head that if I get rejected from a part, or I don't get the part, I don't like using that word rejected, but if I don't get offered the part, as long as I did everything I could possibly in my power to prep that part and deliver an honest, authentic, sincere performance, and I learned something from the process, then it's been a win. Being offered the role is a bonus. Obviously, we do want to get offered roles because that's how we build our career, but being offered the role is the bonus. But as long as I've learned something, it all helps me for that next audition. And that is how I have overcome that rejection sensitivity dysphoria. I also used to get rejection sensitivity dysphoria in rehearsals as well. If I got notes and they were quite negative and then everyone else was getting very positive notes, again, the rejection sensitivity dysphoria would kick in. And then I'd get stuck in loops and I'd have big emotional responses. And I've had to tell myself a story that in that moment, I am being given those notes for a reason. And even if they seem negative, they're not negative. They're there to help me. And that is just one moment in time. And it's not an entire reflection of me as an actor. And I've also had to tell myself the story and really deeply embed it in my brain that all characters are going to start out shaky. So it's absolutely normal to get that, what could be classed as negative feedback. But now I don't see it as negative. I see it as helpful. But in the early days, I did. And I did pitch myself against other people. And then it did kick in the RSD and the low self-worth. And I've had to really work hard on that and really work on my mindset. So if you experience things like that, you've just got to tell yourself a better story. That's all you need to do. But my brain often can get really fuzzy. You know, I do run Standby Method Acting Studio and have life to do as well. And so my brain can get fuzzy when it comes to daily tasks. That has been something that's been a little bit harder to work with. Running Standby Method Acting Studio really showed me where I was not organised, and I've had to learn how to become organised. And it's not something I found natural or that came to me naturally or that I particularly enjoyed. But knowing that the ADHD thrives in structure has helped me get more organised, and it's allowed me to grow this acting studio and help more actors around the world. And even things like this podcast, gosh, I put it off for an entire year because I got too overwhelmed. So I procrastinated on it because I thought the tech was going to be too hard to learn. And because I don't particularly find tech enjoyable, then I got distracted. And then when I finally made myself do it, I set up the podcast and it was easier than I thought. But that's where ADHD can really get the better of us if we don't get on top of it. But in day-to-day life, my brain can feel really bloody fuzzy. And I can feel like I've not got clarity, and I can feel like life is getting on top of me, and I can feel very overwhelmed very, very easily, which is another part of ADHD. So one of the things that I have done to help me with this is I started taking a supplement called Dopa. I saw it online and it was getting really good reviews from lots of different people in different industries. And I thought, right, I'm going to give it a go and see what happens. And one of the things that I struggled with in the beginning was remembering to take the supplements, which you have to take 3 a day. So I've had to put them in a place where I will see them every single morning first thing. So they're in the tea bag cupboard because I always get a cup of tea first thing in the morning, and that reminds me to take them, which actually today I've not taken them. So once I've finished this podcast, I do need to go downstairs and do it. But I started taking them and I thought, I am a little bit skeptical, to be honest. I don't know whether they're going to work. So the first day of taking them, they did work. And then I was like, oh, is this just placebo? Is it just because I'm really excited? So I decided to take them for 6 weeks to see if they genuinely did work or whether it was just placebo. And I have to say, if I miss a day taking them, I know about it. That cloudiness, that fuzziness, that overwhelm, it creeps back into my brain like nobody's business. And when I take them, I've got that absolute clarity. I'm not as easily triggered with the rejection sensitivity dysphoria, and the low mood, which can come with ADHD, isn't as intense. So I tried the Get Dopa, and I'm going to continue taking them because they've made such a difference to my ADHD brain. And so I reached out to the company and I asked them, do you have a link that I can share on the podcast? Because there are so many creatives, so many actors with ADHD. And they said yes. So I wanted to share that link with you, which I've popped underneath where you've pressed play. So if you want to try the Get Dopa, you can use my link and it'll give you 10% off. If at the end of the month you think, they're not really working, then that's fine. You don't need to use them again. But if you have a similar experience to me where you can feel your mood's lifted, your brain isn't fuzzy, you've got clarity, you don't feel as overwhelmed, then you can continue with them the way that I am. They're a massive investment for me. So I've left that link underneath where you've pressed play if you want to go ahead and get 10% off and try the Get Dopa. I just want to wrap this episode up by saying I have described my personal experience. None of this is medical advice. None of this can give you a diagnosis. You do need to go and talk to professionals if you are not officially diagnosed. I am 50% of the way through my diagnosis, and I will update you when I've completed the diagnosis as well, when I've got my results. Is that what you would say when you've got your results back? So just to wrap up then, all of these strategies and all of these tips that I've shared with you are not just to fix ADHD, they're about enabling you to do what you love, which is to grow your acting career, to act from truth, to constantly tap into your creativity and feel powerful as you go through this journey of becoming a professional, successful, unstoppable actor. My neuro-spicy brain is not a barrier. It has been in the past before I knew about ADHD, but it's not a barrier anymore. It's an asset for me, and it can be an asset for you too. You just need systems and tips and tools and hacks in place to help it serve your craft. So if you're watching your career, your auditions, and you're feeling like any of this has been held back by focus, time blindness, distractibility, just know that you're in good company here and there are always ways forward. So I would like to remind you to try the Get Dopa if you feel called to it, and go and try that 10% off. The link is underneath where you've pressed play. And I'd also like you to come and join our Unstoppable Actors Facebook group if you feel called to, and come and share your experience with ADHD in there, so we can all talk about this more openly and not feel ashamed and not feel alone. So all of the links are underneath in the episode description. I really hope this episode has either inspired you, or it's given you some insights into an ADHD brain, or it's just helped you feel less alone. I'll see you in the next episode. I've absolutely loved hanging out with you, and I really hope you found this episode inspiring. If you have, please do rate the podcast and hit follow so you never miss an episode, and I can help more actors like you. And come and join one of the most supportive, uplifting acting communities on socials, the Unstoppable Actors Facebook group, where you'll get your weekly injection of inspiration, networking, and receive your free Method Actors handbook so you can become an unstoppable actor.